knowing your background, you're from Jersey. You moved to Texas, and then you made yourself at home at Texas. Considering the independent community in Texas has started to grow just a bit, even though you mentioned before, and I've noticed too because I've known quite a few people from Texas as well that I have interacted with. Texas is not necessarily the tax incentive state that I know filmmakers would like for it to be, but yet there's still films coming out of that state from a lot of good filmmakers too, and a lot of good actors as well. Yourself, Will Kaufman, and quite a few people that you know as well too. Todd Jenkins, who you worked with on the film Apocalypse Road, who I've also spoke with as well, and then quite a few other actors along the way too. So, considering now how things are going for you so far, because I know you have a project coming out next year with Billy Blair, which the name escapes right now, but it's a World War II piece that you've completed here.
Yeah.
What was it? Operation Overlord? Is that the name of the movie?
That's it. Yeah.
That's it. Okay. So the way things are going right now for you, because it seems like you haven't stopped working pretty much since you've moved to Texas, is what it looks like to me. How are things going for you so far as leaving the East Coast, going down to Texas, and then hitting the ground running there? Has it been pretty overwhelming at times for you going forward with this?
It's not overwhelming. I think I wasn't in film when I lived in the Northeast. I went to college in Florida, and when I was younger, the idea was, let me pack up and get as far away from my parents as I could. So I said, I'm going to go to school in Florida, and so
What school in Florida did you go to?
I went to Florida Southern, which is in Lakeland, which is between Tampa and Orlando.
Oh, okay.
And I went for economics. I wanted to be in politics. It was like, that's the plan. And it didn't work out. I got married super young, and it just, I was in the business world. And then when I moved up and down the East Coast a little bit, and then eventually landed in Atlanta. And film was just starting to pick up there with AMC, and they were developing shows there, but they weren't really there yet. And then when I moved to Texas, I started Circus Wheel Productions, which was my own LLC, which is what we ran a couple movies through. My first movie was a Western, and I got lucky, and there were big names in it. And to this day, it's just sitting on a hard drive somewhere. It just didn't work, And
what about it didn't work though?
It's funny you ask. I mean, young people ask me all the time, like, what's the most important thing about filmmaking? And the only answer I ever give anybody is you need to choose your producers more wisely than anything else. You can work with bad actors, you can work with bad lighting, bad camera. You can't work with someone over your shoulder telling you what to do when you really believe that you know more than that person anyway. And so I was young, I'd never done a feature before. And I had people from LA telling me what to do, and people from Dallas telling me what to do. And I just broke, and said, okay, we'll try that, or we'll do another take like this, or forget everything that we planned, and we'll do it your way because you're the money and we want to keep you happy. And the movie just never came out. And people were like, Judd Nelson and Charles Baker and Lamari Nadal, who was in American Gangster with Denzel Washington, like all these names in it that were, some of them were phenomenal people. We made some great relationships, but it'll never see the light of day, half because I hate it.
What is it about you hate it though?
It was a mixture of, when you're doing a short film, everybody, you got to prepare, and you're trying to impress people. And a lot of these talented people from LA just were not prepared for the project. They weren't expecting to do an indie film that had we were under 500,000, but close to it. And, they were more concerned with what their trailer looks like than coming to set ready to work. And I think it comes from people that grew up in the 70s and 80s as child stars, and they grow up spoiled in Hollywood, and then they get on a Texas movie set where we're asking you to do things you normally don't do, and they just lose their mind, And
so was it a tumultuous shoot then for you?
It was bad. I'm not gonna lie, it was terrible. It was the worst 3 weeks of my life, probably. It was just,
really?
I had a full-on confrontation with an actor. I never thought, and this is a well-known guy, who wanted to fist fight, and it's just like, I've got crew members telling me like, we need to be careful. We can't leave you alone with him near the cliffs because we were out in the mountains. I'm like, what is going on here?
Was it really that bad for them
It was
to be
bad.
concerned to be pushed over a cliff?
Yeah, it was really bad. I'll give you a
Wow.
quick story. Was the very first night, there's about 40 of us in the crew and executive
Okay.
producers, and the main actor didn't show up to the table read. So someone else was reading his stuff, and he walks in costume about halfway through the table read and just sits there and listens to it. And at the end of the table read, everyone kind of claps, and he stands up and he's got all these ideas. And I looked at our director of photography and I'm like, can we do any of this? And he's like, no. And the main actor just says, well, I quit. I'll be upstairs, fly me home tomorrow morning. It was just stuff like that. And you're just like, you know, it's just the difference, I guess, between the West Coast and Texas. You know, everyone here is more laid back, is more willing to talk about things. And out there, it's very cutthroat. You know, if I don't want to do this, I'm not going to do it. And I'm the talent. And in my head, being from New York / New Jersey, I'm like, to hell with them. We'll fire them and sue them and hire somebody else.
That would be my first reaction too.
Yeah. And then I had producers saying, no, we got to go up and apologize. And so we went up and apologized, you know, and it was just stuff like that.
So apologize what, to cater to their sensibilities and to just appease them, to make them feel comfortable?
Yeah. And basically that set the precedent of whatever you want for the next 3 weeks. You're going to get, you know, it was really bad. But I will say the best thing that ever came out of it is, you know, for one, I met my wife now on that movie set, which is probably the best thing that happened off of it. But the second best thing was when we were driving home, and I get home, I call my friend Michael Ray Lewis, who DP'd Apocalypse Road, and I said, hey man, I need to make another movie. I'll pay for it, but we need to make a movie our way because this thing's never going to come out, and I don't want my career to end. And so we went right from Kreep, which was the name of the movie, right into Apocalypse Road, like 2 or 3 weeks later.
Right.
And we wrote that script in 20-page sections. We filmed it in 20-minute sections. We put the first 20 minutes online for free for everyone to see. And it was very much like let's throw it together. You know, Tiffany, my wife, and I, we just patchworked it together. We found actors like Todd and Billy and Tom that we knew could act and would do it, understanding our budget. We found an investor, and he was super great to work with, which was refreshing. And then we just, from there it took off. But the beginning of the business for us was awful. You know, it was just, it was really bad.
So explain to me then about, you know, because this is part I'm confused about. I'm hoping you can clarify for me. So the movie is locked away, and obviously you have no intention to want to release it because you're not happy with it. So did you have full control as far as the overall final edit? Or, I mean, how did you get that to make that decision to say, no, we're not releasing, without producers saying we've got to release it or else?
Yeah, that was another problem. Was we had a producer who was an actor, and so that caused issues in the edit because they did have some creative control over what shots she wanted to be in and what she didn't. And then you had 2 producers and an editor and myself that were always in the room, and I really just wanted it to be me and the editor, and it was not allowed. It was like producer, no, why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? And we got lucky because we shot in West Texas, but there's a gentleman out of Oklahoma named Steve Mathis, and Steve is big Hollywood gaffer. He did everything from Halloween to Friday the 13th to the latest Terminator movie, Moulin Rouge, and he's a genius. And he just said, I got nothing going on right now. I'll do this movie for you guys at, minuscule rate. So the movie looks great lighting wise, I will say.
Yeah.
But Steve was kind of a mentor to me on set because he would pull me aside and be like, don't let them do that. Don't let them do that. So in the edit, I had this idea where the bad guys in the film were the best part of the movie. So let's put them in the beginning of the movie. We draw the viewer in. Let's find out more about these guys. And then we'll go into the crappy acting, so at least people are watching the movie, and nobody would bite on it. The producers, the editor. So I had Steve drive down from Oklahoma City. And on the drive, I was like, here's what I need you to do. I need you to sit in the edit, watch the movie. And they go, it would be great if you put those bad guys in the beginning of the movie. And he said that, and they all were like, yeah. what great idea. If Steve Mathis says it's good, it must be good.
Because of the clout that he had, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But once Steve left that meeting, the movie was edited and they started just chopping it to hell. And I don't like to have a lot of cuts in my films. I like to be able to watch what's happening. And they just chopped it up to the point where it just didn't make any sense. And there was no tension. There was no humor. They took all the humor out. And the film was 74 minutes long and we didn't have any budget to do any pickups. And so I said, well, let's just let it simmer. And, you know, I went through a divorce at the time after shooting that. And that came into play where, you know, he said, she said, taking sides with people. And it came to the point where we just had the hard discussion that the movie's not very good. Nobody's going to buy it. It's 6 minutes short. You know,
6 minutes short as in what this what's
the runtime. It was only the way they edited it. It was 74 minutes long.
Right. So is 80 minutes the standard as far as like the minimum for the runtime?
Most of the distributors we talked to were like, anything less than 80, I can't sell.
Why is that?
I don't know. I guess it's just it's kind of like an unwritten standard, I guess. In you know, and it was in the contract for the deliverables. You know, at least in the film. And it's a shame because the movie has moments where you're like, oh, I'll be interested in this. And, you know, we had actors that had accents that needed to go away and they didn't. And so it didn't make any sense. You know, it was just a nightmare. But we did meet Stephen Michael Quezada on that set from Breaking Bad. And Stephen's a great friend of ours. So there were positives, you know, that came out of it. But I guess the old adage of, you know, you've got to learn how not to make a movie before you learn how to was instrumental for us because we really took it in the teeth, you know, and it was not fun. But when we did Apocalypse Road coming off the heels off that, it was like a breath of fresh air, you know. We can do what we want, right? Vision, and so it was nice, you know.
So explain to me about how, you know, going from Kreep and then going into Apocalypse Road. And you said you did in a span of like, I think you said 3 weeks from that production, finalizing everything, and then moving into that. So like how, and then you said you wrote increments of like, you know, 20 minutes of here and there. So essentially you directed the film with an unfinished script for the most part is what it sounds like to me. So how difficult was it? Because I understand that, you know, I would imagine with the first film, you had at least mostly a completed script. And then obviously it would evolve. But then with this movie, not having a completed script, was there any lack of, did you have anybody that would probably come in and say, so are we going to do a feature film? What's going to be the story? What's the approach? Because if you're doing X amount of time for this amount of work, and then we have to come back for another set of time down the line, what's going to be the standard for us to know what we're going to be pulling off? Like how hard was that for you?
It wasn't an easy sell, I can tell you that, but Michael believed in it. And, you know, Bill Nicholas, who was our main investor on that film, he was a good friend of ours. And I just approached him and I said, you know, I just came off of a movie where they believed in the script. Everybody believed that script is a Hollywood script and it has, you know, award winner written on it. It may have, it may not. Who cares, right? The thing is, I told Bill, I said, don't worry about the script and just believe that I'm going to do it and it's going to be phenomenal. And if you believe in me, you know, let's do this. And he was like, I'm in, you know, because I know you're going to do it. He's always been a champion for myself, you know, and he was a little uneasy, I think, about, you know, well, you've got 20 pages and I said, the script's not going to make sense because it's only 20 pages. And I had to convince certain actors, like, just worry about this 20 minutes. Michael and I will take care of the rest. And I think we shot it in 5 or 6 parts, the 6th being down in Galveston at the coast. And I do think by the end of those 6 segments, as we call them, or sequences, everybody was kind of at everybody's throats because it was like, we weren't there for 2 or 3 weeks. It was like 4 months, you know, and it was just like, can we finish this already? You know, and it was nice because we were able to edit as we go and color as we go and score as we go. So when the movie was done, it was like we were able to get it distributed within, you know, 2 months we'd had a buyer and all that. Not necessarily saying it was the right buyer, but
Right.
you know, we were able to start seeing money quicker than if we had to wait a year to distribute it, you know.
So did you have most of the story already planned out as far as where you wanted to go, or were you just kind of coming up with on the spot as the production was going through?
I think we had I think I still have the document. We had an outline.
Mm.
Like, here's what happens in sequence 1, sequence 2, sequence 3. Where we got lost a little bit was there's a sequence with what they're called dolls, and they're these girls, and they've got mascara running down their face, and they're in this rich woman's house who's more or less.
I don't think I saw that part of the film yet.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
and
like later on
people,
in the movie, right?
yeah, people are
Yeah.
like, well, what the hell's going on here? This makes no sense compared
Yeah.
to the rest of the movie, but because I hadn't seen the rest yet or seen the last half of it. So it was like, but then when you watch the whole thing, you understand that this woman is collecting these girls and she wants them to look like dolls, you know? And it was just, we had a lot of that.
I can see that confusion in their face when they walk in on that. I can see that. Yeah. Okay.
So it was a lot of that. But Michael and I, we just, and everybody else, Tiffany, everyone that was involved, we just said, just stay the course. Katie Kohler, Ashlyn McEvers, who was the two sisters in it, they bought into it from day one, not even knowing where the story was going to go. And I won't spoil the end, but I mean, we made the end of the movie up on the spot. You know, it was like, the script said this, we're going to change it to this. And everyone was like, whoa, that's like a complete different ending. You just took it to a different level. And I said, but based on everything we've done, I think it makes sense to do this. But
so were you not confident? Were you not confident with the original ending of the script before you got to that?
It's weird. It's the second movie we've done. We did Apocalypse Road and then Buckskin that we changed the ending on the fly. And I think it was just more or less a feeling of like, you know, the original ending was very safe. Let's take a chance. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But to me, it felt like the end of Buckskin was completely different. It was a happy Hollywood ending. And I was like, nope.
I told you before in the messages that I felt like there's a dark place that you want to go to, but for whatever reason, whether it be, you know, decisions for the actors, investors, whoever else, that you don't necessarily go down that route. And that's the part that always intrigues me the most about a lot of these stories, especially with 90 Feet from Home, because there's the scenes which we'll get into with Mike, with Sean. I meant to say that I felt like could have gone darker. I'm not saying that it should have. I'm not getting to that, but I felt like it could have gone a really dark place to really feel the hatred towards the guy.
Yeah.
And then with Copper Bill, there was Dusty's character, which I felt like could have gone a lot darker in that interrogation scene, which I felt like was going to go there, but didn't necessarily get there. So, and then obviously we have the Indian, the chief, I should say, that comes in, and that dude was like dark from the moment you saw him. Like, oh, this guy's going to be the one you don't want to fuck with.
Yeah.
So my question to you about how you're changing your stories along the way, and how you're making the change from with Buckskin, and then the darkness that comes with the story, even some of the more lighter films, which I wouldn't say they're lighter, but lighter in tone, I would say, like with Rodeo Thief, and then even 90 Feet from Home, which I think is considered to be maybe your lightest films. But I'm kind of saying that by default. But with your movies though, there's something about the way you're telling your stories that I actually do appreciate, that I feel like if probably given more time, maybe more money, more resources, that you probably would have the ability to expand on some of those things and try these ideas that you want to go for, so that way the actors can take the time to develop the character and get into the right mindset for that character, and vice versa with you and everyone else involved. So do you feel like when you are writing these stories, are you trying to, I mean, I'm trying to see how I can answer the question without being overcompensating, but are you trying to focus more on the end result for the human side of the story, as far as, you know, having a positive outcome for the characters, or are you just rather sticking with the negative, as far as the darkness of what these characters are going through, and then the consequences of said darkness?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think for me, like, you take a movie like Buckskin, and a Buckskin, without giving too much away for anyone that hasn't seen it, a lot of Tom Zembrod's character is myself. You know, there's
Right.
It was tough. That was a tough one to shoot. That was a tough one to get through, because I really took Tom and broke him down. You know, like I wouldn't let him sleep. I wouldn't let him come out of character. I was constantly picking his performance apart. And I think I did that because I knew if I broke him down to that level, he would put an amazing performance in. And I think it's the best performance he's ever done in anything. And when you look at Tom, that he is that tired. He is not acting tired. He got sick on set. You know, he ate those berries and some of them were fake and some were real, and he got really upset stomach from it. And it was as real as it gets, but I wanted it to be real. And I think from a writer standpoint, I'll write the script, and every one of our films has to, for me at least, rules, the Brett rules, has to have a message behind it, whether it's,
right,
you know, a goofy shark movie like we just wrapped, or a World War II movie. The movie might be about a shark or these guys in World War II, but it's really about, like in the shark movie, it's about alcoholism, you know. You know, Copper Bill is about greed. Buckskin is about regret and consequence and fate and all these things that I was dealing with or thinking about, you know. And so for me, it's most important, I think, that the actors come across genuine as much as they can, and that either the audience is satisfied with the consequence and the outcome of that actor, or they're angry about it. Because I feel like with 90 Feet from Home, the end of that movie is so polarizing.
yeah.
There's like a million people that love it and a million that wrote hate mail, you know.
What
And
was the hate mail like for that movie?
I think 90 Feet from Home is so, you know, it deals with alcoholism and child abuse. I don't think I knew, for one, how rampant that is in our country.
Oh
And
yeah.
we started getting awesome emails about, there was one in particular with a guy, his stepdad was verbally abusive to his family and lost his voice. He can't speak. And before he died, he wrote down that he was sorry. And it was just stuff like that was coming in. Like, I haven't talked to my dad in 20 years. And I watched 90 Feet from Home. And after that last scene, when the music hits, I called my abusive father, you know. And then we had people like, how dare you promote child abuse? You know,
well, hold on, what's that? They said that?
Yeah, we got a couple nasty notes about how we were glorifying abuse, or, you know.
Did they watch the movie?
Yeah, like, you know, the end should have been different to justify what this monster had done. And I'm like, you do know this is based off a true story, you know, and I'm not, a real person gave me this story, so I'm not gonna, you know, poop all over it and just say, sorry, Scott, this is how it ends because these people want him to be, you know, crucified for what he did.
Yeah.
So to me, it's important that the end of each character brings about either a positive or negative outcome. The last thing I want to do is make a movie. You know, we watched one not too long ago. I won't name it, but we were super excited about it. And when it was over, we were like, what? You don't feel anything towards any of the characters. You don't care what happens to them. It's just like, leave a review on IMDb. It's a 5 out of 10 and move on, you know. And you know, obviously, I mean, you know that most people are just going to shit all over your movie, whether it's good or bad. So I don't care about that. I really just care about how many people we can satisfy or unsatisfy with the person, because, you know, the best movies for me are the movies where I can relate to a character and follow that character through the film, through their landscape. And then at the end, you're like, oh yeah, he got away, he got justice. Or you're like, oh man, he got killed, or whatever. You know, you feel something towards that character. So I don't know if that answers your question.
And I understand what you meant by you want to leave a message behind that. And I appreciated that too. But I had to understand like why Sean's character didn't get his due justice, if you will.
Yeah.
And that's the realities of, I think, of life, where sometimes you just got to let it go. And I mean, that's kind of how I perceived it, in my opinion, even though he kind of gets his comeuppance in some degree. But
yeah,
it's a situation where I think you have both sides of the coin. You have the I moved on, and then you have the, well, you're going to get what you deserve based upon, you know, with what you've been diagnosed with. So that's where I noticed it the second time around, about how I could kind of just articulate what I felt was, where my confusion kind of kicked in. So there's a lot that I got from that movie that I really did start to understand. And then from that movie really was kind of where I started to understand the approach of your storytelling that I actually started to appreciate more. So then I will go back and watch Copper Bill, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So here's what I wanted to also ask you about as well. You mentioned before that, you were going to school to study economics, didn't work out. And then you had gone into Texas and then started getting into filmmaking. And I know you've answered this question before, but my question really is what I want to focus on is that, once you started to go through making the films, writing the scripts down, um, did you get more satisfaction out of that with the hardships that comes with that? Because as you already know, filmmaking, I only know from stories, but I know that filmmaking is not an easy thing to do for a number of different reasons: scheduling, working, people to cooperate, getting to cooperate with you, and so on. But despite those hurdles, though, did it ever deter you from wanting to continue on? Because obviously you've been doing it from the moment you landed in Texas, and here you are now still making films. So I believe that answers my question. But at any point, did you feel like maybe you probably need to reconsider and reevaluate with what you're doing now because
Yeah.
of the constant hardship that comes with that?
Yeah, I mean, you want to quit every day. I still do. You know,
Really?
I think it's a love-hate relationship.
Mm.
When you, yeah,
So
yeah,
do you love it more than you hate it?
n- you, I, my approach is, and this is kind of what my wife and I talk about this all the time, but you have to want you have to want the work more than the reward. I'm
Mm.
not in this to win Oscars. I'm not in this to live in the Hollywood Hills. I'm not. That's not who I am. I don't aspire to be that way. What I aspire to do is tell stories, and you look at it that way. So whenever we get to the point where something is too difficult, the scheduling isn't working, an actor's being difficult, you're working with B22 Films, we're working as a married couple, so sometimes that creates tension and you have to walk away, from producing and just keep your writer hat on or director hat. Whenever that happens, a very smart man in the business told me, you're making it too complicated. Anything that overcomplicates the situation, cut it out. So sometimes it's as simple as, we need to find another location, and you do, and it instantly becomes easy. Or this actor, we really want him, we're going to bend the schedule for him, we're going to pay him, and then you're like, this is impossible now. Find another actor, you find someone else, that person steps in, and it was always the right decision all along. So I think a lot of people get in their own heads with it, including myself. But if you just take a step back and you realize you're just telling a story, you know, the lighting doesn't need to be perfect. You want the sound to be perfect, but God knows we've made movies with terrible sound, but if you have the story and you stick to what the story is, it'll touch people, or it'll anger people, or bring a new perspective to people regardless. And I think, yeah, there are times when you're just like, man, I'm done. This is it. I think last year we worked all through COVID. We followed protocols, and it was difficult. It was not fun filmmaking. And I think we were ready to hang it up too, because we were like, the mask thing, you're talking to your DP, they can't hear you, they don't understand you, you can't be in this section with these people, you can't eat together. And you're like, the camaraderie is gone. You're basically like, hey, how's lunch? And so, but you grind through it, and the moment that makes it all worth it is not film festivals for me. It's not everyone filling an audience to pat you on the back and tell you how good you did, because then they go in the car and they say the movie sucks, right? So for me, the moment that gives you the most enjoyment, and this is really strange, is when the person who paid for the film looks at it and goes, man, great job. Because to me, that's one of the number one people I'm trying to please, is these investors who are investing in me. They're not investing in the company. They're not investing in an actor or a script. They're saying, Brett, we believe in you as a filmmaker, so we're going to continue to fund your vision, and I think that was one of the only things. We had tremendous investors on 90 Feet from Home. We loved them, good friends, you know, independent people that believed in us. But when we did the private screening for them, they hated the movie.
Why?
And it hurt, man. It was like, if they watch this, it's no offense to you guys. I love you guys. But, you know, they got in the limo right after and left. I ran after the limo. I was like, did you guys like the movie? And they were like, yeah, we're just tired, you know. And we'd been drinking all day and everything, you know, so it was, but then later on they were like, you know, we were expecting more like this or more like that. The subject matter is a little harsh, you know, and I was down about it. I was like, these are the people that believed in me and they're telling me the product sucks, you know? And so it was a tough conversation. Well, how do we fix it? I want you guys to be happy. But at the end of the day, they said, no, make the movie you want to make. It doesn't matter if we like it, but it's just not in my blood to disappoint the people that feed you, you know. And so that's one of the things that always keeps me going, is I know that I can pick up the phone tomorrow and call someone and say, hey, I've got this great idea, would you guys like to partner with us and make it happen? And they're like, yeah, let's do it. And it's exciting and fresh and new. But I mean, I don't lie, man, there are times where even on set when you're over it, you know, and you're just like, I think there's been times when I've had Tiffany or Anthony or DP, like, you direct the scene, like, time out, you know, like, I'm not there at the moment, I need a break, you know, and I don't want to slow production down. So somebody else hop in here and take this so I can have 5 minutes to cool off or whatever it is. Okay. But you do want to give up. But at the end of the day, 99.9% of people on this planet don't get to do this ever in their entire life. And we've had that discussion on set with people where we pull them aside and said, do you know what you're doing right now? You're making a movie. You're not curing cancer. You're not, you know, this is easy. Let's just have fun with it. You know, if it's getting too stressful, we're doing something wrong. Let's figure out what it is and regroup, you know? And so, and I think that's why we make so many movies, is the team we've built and the actors, they love working for us, you know, because we're going to work you hard, but it's not going to be, I mean, I don't think we work over 10 hours a day ever, you know?
Really?
No, it's like, I've got kids, we've got stuff to do, and people want to go home, and, you know, it's not fair to pay you a micro budget rate and expect you to work 16 hours. Just doesn't happen. You know, we're going to feed you really well. We're not going to throw down some pizzas, you know, we're going to cater food in, take care of you, good breakfast when you get to set. And, you know, Tiffany does a really good job of keeping everybody happy. So when we do have another project, everybody wants in on it that we're used to working with. And, you know, we joke about it, but it's like the Bentman verse. It's like all these movies with Tom Hallam can kind of exist in a timeline. We've actually considered doing a movie where these characters are all personalities of Tom Hallam. And
interesting.
He's in the Old West, and then he's a rodeo guy, and then he's a thief when he's actually like a mental patient. We floated that idea around for a little while, but
interesting.
Yeah, it's fun, but you get to the point where it becomes unfun. And then my advice to everyone is just cut out anything that is overcomplicating the situation, you know?
So with the a group of people that you work with, again, with especially with the actors, because Tom Zembrod, I always mess up his name. You know, what I noticed in the credits too was that apart from being an actor on screen, he also helps out with stunt coordinating, grip, and things like that, which I didn't realize that, you know, how involved everyone was on the production as far as, you know, the behind the scenes are concerned. So I didn't realize the extent of his background when it came to films, because I only associate him with him just being an actor. So was that something that he had a background in doing that before working with you on the set, having background with like a production and things of that nature, or was it just acting? He just kind of rolled into that side of it.
I don't know what he did first, but Tom has always been a stunt coordinator, stunt actor. So I know with Six Flags here in Texas and all over the country, at one point, you know, he was in the Batman and Robin stunt show, and he can do just about anything, on a horse, off a horse, you know, anything like that. And he introduced us to, you know, to Robert Keith, who also did that on a bigger scale. I don't know. I think they partnered for a while, and Kurt Wheeler was another gentleman. So it's really fun because like in Operation Overlord, that was our 10th feature. And I was like, we need to do something for number 10. And so they introduced us to a gentleman named Sean Roth who burns himself. And I was like, let's light a Nazi on fire, you know, and not CGI. Let's actually light this dude on fire. And so we did it, you know, and it's like a massive stunt on a micro budget level because we just know these people, and for them it's fun. It's crazy how it's fun, you know, like so Tom's one of my best friends. He does anything on set you ask him to do. And with Buckskin, we had to tell him, like, I know that you want to go over there and light that lantern, but you need to stay here and act. And so it was really hard to keep him in actor mode. He wanted to do all kinds of stuff, and we had to go, no, Tom, over here, you know. Our associate producer, Saneem, was always constantly like, Tom, over here, you know, let somebody else pick up the trash and do all this. And so Tom is like a jack of all trades, but acting wise, I love to use him because he can do anything you ask him to do.
Yeah.
You know, if he needs to be, you know, an attorney, he can shave like in Copper Bill and play the guy with the suit and tie. He can play a 19 or 1820s trapper. He can be hilarious. He can be sad, you know, and it's a lot like Billy Blair. We love working with him because Billy can do just about anything we ask him to do, you know, and so we're super blessed in that respect because we can make those phone calls. They're local guys,
right?
You know, we're not flying them in from anywhere, and it's just it's fun because it's like getting together with your friends, you know.
Well, so you know, with Billy, I remember when I had saw him in the movie. What was it? It wasn't Copper Bill. It was Rodeo Thief, because I saw Copper Bill first, and I saw Rodeo Thief. There's actually a humorous side about him that I because I'm sure you've seen the movie Cherokee Creek that Todd had directed, which I loved him in that movie. And then when I had seen some of the other films he's done after the fact, the one thing I've noticed the most with you using him in the film, with the exception of Buckskin, of course, is that he has some of the funniest bits in the film. So and it's just like it, I guess to you know, I'm not sure how people would react to it, but in my opinion, I thought he was actually some of the funniest things in the movie, where you know he's making facial expressions or you know reacting in an awkward way, and then has some of the funniest lines in the movie, especially in Copper Bill, where he's like taking the shit in the toilet. It smells like shit here. He's like, oh, I feel fucking better, you know, something like that. So I love that about him. And then so I can see like why, you know, I love, here's the thing I love about your movies too, and several other directors that I've come across that have worked with actors, and they always bring them back, and they bring them back, and either the roles are getting bigger, or the actors are getting better and better, and therefore the roles have much more impact for this with the story. So Tom has been an example of that as well, especially in Buckskin. But forgive me, I'm trying to remember the actor's name again who played who was in fuck, I'm trying to remember his name off the top of my head right now. The actor in Copper Bill, your good friend Tom. Yes, Holland. Thank you. Yes. So he's another actor too that I'm starting to become a big fan of. Especially, really wasn't until after I saw 90 Feet from Home. No, I'm sorry, it was Rodeo Thief, because I saw Copper Bill. I loved what he did there. Then I saw 90 Feet from Home, which was like night and day difference in terms of characters he plays. And then the Rodeo Thief, which is where you really get to see kind of like the I think is probably one of his best performances that I've come across in the movies you've done, that he's done with you, I meant to say. So when I see the number of actors you've worked with over and over again, that to me is a good sign of like, okay, things are sinking in very well. Therefore, the story is probably going to get better and better and better from there.
Right.
So with you though, when working with these actors again, I know you mentioned before that you've developed a good relationship, and 9 times out of 10 you call them, they'll probably show up. When you are now working with other people and with other productions that you're working on, do you prefer to keep it that way now that you've already had this momentum going for you, or are you all still open to the idea of let's bring in some fresh meat here to, not fresh meat, let's say fresh set of people here that can help out with other areas of their.
Yeah, it's actually, it's funny you asked that, but I think with there comes a point where, you know how much time it takes to write a script. And so if I'm doing that while Tiffany is producing, she's casting, I think there came a point where I just didn't have enough time to write, help produce, and direct. So, she had said, well, let's start looking at other, especially on the actor side. I think with Blood in the Water, which is a shark movie, which the title's changing, but we used almost except for Tom Hallam, we used almost an entire LA based cast. People we'd never worked before with us. They were phenomenal. Great people, awesome acting. On Operation Overlord, we worked with a bunch of German actors that some had never acted before. Some were acting in short films, but they're graduating now to a feature, and it's the most screen time they've ever had. And so she does a really good job of like, hey, it's time to flip that switch and bring some, fresh faces in here. On the crew side, I think we've worked with the same 2 or 3 DPs our entire lives here, the same editors, the same sound designers, the same people that score the films. And that to me is just because these people were in the trenches with us with Apocalypse Road and The Night Before, where we were just fumbling through the business, and they got paid pennies. And as a thank you and a testament to all that hard work 4 or 5 years ago, we're going to keep giving you steady work and steady money and bigger checks and bigger budgets. And so that's always nice too, because it's a little bit of loyalty, if you will, because we're loyal to them, they're loyal to us. Not saying that we're not open to working with new people, but we have been burned on that a few times, where you hire someone that you think is going to be phenomenal and they come on set and it just doesn't work. Or, like Tom Zembrod, he may have worked with someone. He's like, I don't know if they're going to jive with us, because we work really fast, we work lean, mean, let's just shoot. We're here to make a movie, so let's not spend too much time at craft services. Let's actually make the movie, And so, yeah, it's fun. I think we're doing a Western in January. We're working with all new people, except for Tom Zembrod in the film. It's like,
he's your Robert De Niro is what it looks like to me.
Yeah. I had written the role for Tom for this film as the bad guy. Because the hilarious kind of spaghetti Western bad guy. And I'm like, that's Tom. But then the leads, I was like, who knows? And, Tiffany did a big casting, and man, we had like 300 people submit for the female lead and really great choices. And we picked, phenomenal actor who I think is LA based. And so it'll be fun to see where 2020 goes. I mean, we have the most projects that we've ever worked on slated for next year. And so what we're doing is we're inviting young filmmakers to take a script of mine and say, hey, do you want to direct this? Or, hey, do you want to write this? Or, hey, do you want to shoot this or edit this? And we're going to try to expand the business to helping the people that are making their Apocalypse Road, where it's like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to do it. These guys in Dallas are making a lot of movies. Maybe they can teach me how to do it, and we can support them on the way up, like people did, for me all those years ago. So, but then that being said, I have 3 or 4 projects that are my baby that I'm like, I have to do this, I have to do this one, so it turns out this way. But I don't know how we got on that, but yeah, we have a huge slate for next year, and not everything will get done, but it'll be fun because there's some really cool stories in there. Like,
do you have everything lined up already as far as like the next set of films that are going to be worked? Because I know you mentioned you have a number of slates coming up here, but is it like set in stone that this is going to be coming up? Oh, did you need to take it away from your wife?
No, she's just saying.
Oh, hey, how are you doing? How are you? What was I going to say? So you have all the projects lined up. Are they set in stone? Okay, so once you're done with this one, and then in the next month you're going to be working on this one here. Like, how does that all play out as far as the line of work you guys are preparing for?
It's interesting because one thing that I'm learning with young filmmakers, because we also run a film festival
right.
That happens in Dallas, and we get to meet some really cool students and things like that. So I don't know how much you know about Dallas. I think you know a lot, but nothing was happening here.
Right.
Commercial, business. It was American Airlines and J.C. Penney and all that. And I know because my wife did that for 20 years, and she was in every commercial that came out. And the business was great if you were a model or a commercial actor. Then Cinestate came into the world, and they brought Mel Gibson and Vince Vaughn and all these actors, and they started making these, ultra right-wing conservative movies that everyone loved to hate on. And then there was a big sexual harassment case that went on with them, and Cinestate went away. And now they're in LA doing movies for the Daily Wire or something. So our goal was always like, let's take the spot of Cinestate and make B22 the film company that's constantly working, regardless of the budget, regardless of tax incentives. Because the last thing you want to do is rely on a tax incentive, because you'll wait forever to make your movie.
What do you mean by that? Waiting forever because of tax incentives?
The tax incentives in Texas are set up for you to fail. They're so difficult to obtain that a production like 1883 can come in here and take the entire incentive for the year and leave the indie filmmaker with nothing. So we're not going to rely on the state of Texas to give us $200,000 when Taylor Sheridan can come in here and shoot 4 episodes of 1883 or whatever it is and say, give me the whole $2 million in the budget. They're going to do that. And they should, Sam Elliott, Tim McGraw, these big actors are here. But so we don't rely on any of that. We rely on ourselves and investors. And so a big part of our business model is to go to our investors who we love and say, what does the market need? And they'll say, we need a shark movie. I got an opening at Walmart for a shark movie. Great. Let's find a shark movie script. If we can't find one, we write it and we go right into production, So we rely on our distributor to kind of feed us what's needed. And then we look for that and we try to schedule it out, but it's very fluid. Like,
right.
Western in January, and then we've got something else for February. And then we're like, well, what can we do in March/April? Well, what do you need? We don't have that. Let's write it. It just so happens to be sci-fi and we have that. So it's just kind of a fluid calendar. But it's hard because people have great ideas and they want to make their movies. And sometimes the answer is from us. They come to us and say, hey, I need a production house to produce this. There's just not a market for it. We can't bring it to a distributor and them sell it. So for instance, I had someone that was like, I've got this coming of age drama about a young couple with some kind of debilitating disease in the family. Well, first question is, what's the budget? 150 grand. And I'm like, who's in it? Oh, nobody you'd know. And I'm just thinking in my head, that's great that you're passionate about that, but there's no chance of making that $150,000 back. There just isn't. There's only so much shelf space. Since COVID, streaming has changed. And I mean, the first 2 questions are budget, who's in it, and if you can't answer those questions with the right answers, I feel like the distributors there's no space for you, and so, that's kind of our business model moving forward is we're going to produce what the market wants. And in between all that, if we have a passion project and we can do it cheap enough, and then we're going to do that too. But, it is a business, it's not a weekend film team. So, that's part of it too, we get so many great ideas sent to us, but there's some we just can't do.
Explain to me about, because some of your films are actually on the streaming platform like Amazon, Epoch Stores I came across on Tubi. So how does that work for you? Are you guys have someone that handles that for you, or are you guys involved with that whole negotiation and finalizing that deal that Amazon's going to be streaming on their platform?
It depends on the project. Like we did independent financing for 90 Feet from Home, and then we self-financed Copper Bill. So we paid for Copper Bill ourselves because we had a plan for it, and we knew we wanted to work with Dustin, and he has a built-in audience, and we could, he
was great in the movie too, by the way.
Yeah, and he was great, and so we always are very cognizant to incentivize our actors that have audiences. huge thing I think that turns off actors is, you know, oh, I have 10 million TikTok followers. You just expect that actor to ask their TikTok followers to buy the movie.
Yeah.
You need to incentivize them to do it. So with Dustin and a few of the other actors, it's like, you push the film, we're going to give you X, you know, and it really did well for 90 Feet Copper Bill. We put that on Amazon ourselves, and it was just, it blew up. We were shocked at how many people were watching this movie. That being said, it is so difficult, and there's so many deliverables and captions and metadata, and you know, even your poster needs to be just that. We got to the point where it was just almost too much work, so we just went straight to distribution and said, pay us for the movie, do whatever you want with it, you know. And so we have a mixed approach to it. Some of the films we're going to be doing, we will control, but when we work through our distributor, they'll control all of that, and they're super great about communication. You know, what do you think about this title? What do you think about this poster? Or check out this trailer. It's not like, I'm trying to think, when we did Apocalypse Road in the night before, those distributors, we gave them the movie and you never heard from them. They could do whatever they want to it. And the people we work with now are, you know, we become friends with them. It's like, hey, what do you guys think about this? And we can be honest and say, I don't really like that. And then they go, yeah, me neither, you know. So it's kind of, it depends on the project, you know, how it, which way it goes.
So do you have like, because here's the thing, I've heard lately, I've actually come across some videos of people who've had experiences with distributors that have been very, very difficult. And I understand the reasons behind that, but it's also, it could also be a very, it's a wake up call, I imagine, for a lot of these filmmakers who are trying to make a movie and then they're trying to push the film to get out on theaters or whatever else. And that's really where the rude awakening happens, from what I'm gathering. So for you, because it sounds like to me, it seems like you experienced a bit of both, and lately it's been more positive than it has been negatives. And I'm sure there's still bumpy roads along the way, but from your own personal experience in seeing both sides of the coins, do you feel that that, you know, with the distributors that you work with right now, I know you said you're confident with them, they communicate with you, but hearing someone else who is not going through what you're going through right now, are you in a position where you feel like, well, we can talk to these guys for you, or is it more like figure it out along the way, and then once you have your footing, and then come back to us? I mean, I'm not sure if I'm asking it correctly.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
As an illustration, filmmaker reached out to me about 6 months ago. He was hyped up on this movie idea he had. They shot it in Louisiana. He was like, dude, it's going to be awesome. And I was like, I bet. I mean, you're shooting it on some incredible cameras, Cook lenses. Man, I'm a fan. I'll watch it, you know. So he said, you've been distributing like 3-4 movies a year, you know, producing, you know, can I pick your brain on this? And again, I said, well, how much did the movie cost? And he told me, and it was an astronomical budget for a movie that didn't have an actor inside the top 75,000 on IMDb. I was just like, whoa, what did you spend your money on? Well, they spent their money on the aesthetics of the film, you know, how it looked, how it sounded, the score. And I'm like, that's terrific. But, you know, and I said to the guy very politely, I said, you've got a good chance never seeing that money again. And I would have put more money into the acting side of it. That guy got pissed off at me, you know, because I think he expected me to just be like, you're gonna make $1 million, man, you know, it's gonna look great. But that's just not serving anybody any good to tell them what they want to hear. You know, not long after that, another filmmaker out of Shreveport or New Orleans, same thing. Hey, you've worked with this distributor. I'm considering them for my film. What do you think? And I said, can I be honest with you? I'd look for someone else, and here's why. And if you're not going to look for someone else, then ask for A, B, C, D, because they trapped us on that. And I'm giving you a way out of being suckered into losing control of your movie, and didn't listen to anything I said, gave it to that distributor, and I'm confident she'll never see a dime off that film, you know? So it's interesting when you ask that, because I feel like people don't want to listen. Yeah. And I totally understand, because it's their baby. I mean, think of all the work we put into it. Nobody's going to tell me it's not $1 million idea. but I bounce ideas off my wife all the time, and she's like, "That's shit," and I'm like, "No, it's not. That's a great idea." And she's like, "Well," and so it's just, I try, and I don't know it all, but I've sat in on those, discussions with the Amazon acquisitions people, and I've listened to what the head of, Hulu and all them are saying in these meetings, because you can buy virtual tickets to these, and they're just, it is a very, very difficult sea to navigate right now. And I think it was Amazon, might have been Hulu, one of the two, were saying, you almost have to think of it as shelf space with any product in Walmart or Target. If you've got a great set of headphones, you've got, Skull, and you've got Beats, and you've got iPod, and then if you're trying to put Brett's headphones on that shelf, they're just going to slowly, push those off because they're not recognizable. So who do you put on the cover of the film that's going to pop so that Walmart or Target or whoever it is wants to put it on that shelf? If you don't have that person, it's just difficult, for indie filmmakers. And I personally believe it's a way for Hollywood to push indie film out because they don't want it, and it's a way for the studios to keep control over the content that's being put out, and it's just crazy. It's a crazy industry. It's wild,
Yeah.
So.
And the thing too about again, as the more I started talking to people in the industry, and then getting more educated with the business side of it too. I've talked about it before with several other people, actors and directors, and the most consistent thing is that I'm sorry. Let me take a step back. The question I always want to ask each one of them is that, do you think that's a detriment to the art process, the art of filmmaking, if you will? Because it seems like in some cases it really does work. In a lot of cases, you just never know about it at all because they never come out. So you have no idea what the ratio is supposed to be of like success and those that fail miserably, because we never hear about these stories at all until you talk with somebody and they'll say, I made a great movie, spent X amount of money, but the distributors are holding on to it right now because they have nothing that they can use to sell the film.
Yeah.
And I understand, and I understand where they're coming from as far as the distributors are concerned. But to me, I always think that if someone is savvy enough about the industry, especially when they arrive out there, because I used to be one of those guys like, how do you make it into the business? And then I realized that's a bullshit question to ask, because it's not about that, really, in my opinion. If you love it, you're going to do it no matter what.
Right.
But I always realized as I got older, the biggest setback a lot of these people go through is that the business side of it. What can you offer? What can you bring in? And will it carry on in the next coming years that you will be continuing? Because some films don't do well in the beginning, but yet they pick up life after the fact. John Carpenter is one of those directors that has that happen to all of his movies mostly. But for you, because here's the thing that I'm always curious about, with your films, because you bring in some really established actors, and the one thing that always intrigues me about how you are able to get the actors, I would imagine they read the script, they like it, but what else do you have to provide for them to give them incentive to want to actually commit to the work, knowing that it's a minuscule budget, knowing that it's going to be for a limited amount of time, and then be able to sell the film to these, when you go to distributors, hey, I got Eric Roberts, I got Dean Cain, I've got Shawn Michaels, I got all these other actors here who are really, really good in this movie. How do you convince them to do that, to convince the actors to join the project, knowing that they probably don't know who you are until you give them a film to watch that they may not even consider watching? I'm not saying that your movies weren't good. It's just that they might not consider watching it because their priorities are elsewhere. So how do you do that for yourself?
It's hard. I rely on Tiffany to do a lot of that, a lot of the convincing. Like with Shawn, okay, when we were casting 90 Feet from Home, Tom Helm was the first actor that came in to read, and we fell in love with him. We'd never seen him before, and like hired him on the spot. Right. Then Adam Hampton was someone that we've known forever, and we wanted him involved in the script, but he couldn't be there to read. So we said, well, let's watch everyone else, and we know what Adam can do. And then Adam actually drove down and read, and we were like, that's Scott.
He was good. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, same thing with the kids. And we were able to pick the kids that match them. So once we had the brothers cast, our casting director, Katrina, was like, you know, Dean's great to work with. And I'm like, you know, Dean's a good actor, but he's got
good in this part.
Yeah, he's got, you know, he's got some very specific beliefs that he sticks to, and that ostracizes him in the business, and that's his choice. And
yeah.
So we'd love to work with him, but he needs to just come work, you know. And he came in so prepared and knocked it out of the park. And then Eric was like, Eric's been around forever. I've always liked him. Let's just see if he'll do it. Come out for the day. And his wife was super cool. She's like, yeah, let's do it, you know?
Yeah.
So we had all these roles on there, and we were casting, you know, Laura Menzie and Heather Williams and all that. And we just did not have Jimmy Devine. And Tiff was freaking out about it. And we said, well, did we make a mistake? And maybe we should have cast Jimmy local and spent money on Adam Hampton's role. And gone after like Mel Gibson's son, or, you know, somebody that had a name. But we just wanted to stick with the people that we believed in. So we sent the script to everyone. We sent it to Jeff Bridges. We sent it to Beau Bridges. We sent it to Mel Gibson's agent. We sent it to Dennis Quaid. We sent it to everyone. Most people never get back to you.
Right.
But we did have a couple actors say, tremendous script, just not going to work for the money you're offering, you know, whatever it was. And Michael Ironside, all these people that we knew read it, and they were like, it's great, we love it. Ironside was interesting because he was, you know, a past alcoholic, and he just didn't want to go back there. You know, he wanted to do the movie, but he was like, I don't want to go back, you know, to that thing. So we go to bed one night, and we're freaking out, you know. We gotta tell the investors we don't have a lead. And I have this dream, because in New Jersey, we grew up watching wrestling, you know, and Shawn Michaels.
You still a wrestling fan too, to this day?
You know, off and on, because of the relationship with some of the wrestlers that we have. You know, I followed, my kids were into it for a long time. And
I'm kind of the same boat as yourself.
Yeah, and so we'll keep up with it. But I had a dream. I was at this big wrestling event. Shawn came up, said hello. And so I come out, Tiff's drinking her coffee, and I'm like, you hear me out. I'm like, Shawn Michaels. And she's like, who? You know, like, what are you talking about?
She didn't know who he was, right?
Yeah, she had no clue. No clue. And she said, if you think he'll do it, call his agent. Well, he didn't have a movie agent, you know, he had a sports agent. And I call him, and I'm like, hey, my name is Brett with B22. Don't hang up. You know, we've got a script I'd like to send Shawn. What do you think? And he was like, who? And I said, my name's Brett. And he was like, yeah, send the script. And literally like an hour later, Chris Stewart calls, and he's like, Shawn's interested in this. And I was like, whoa. So we booked a flight to Orlando and met him at the Performance Center. And he was so genuine and just completely likable. Nothing like I remembered him as a kid.
Yeah.
He was just a complete asshole in the ring. And he had some concerns over language. You know, he's born again. And and he talked to Ted DiBiase, $1 Million Man, about that. He was like, well, if you play Judas in, you know, Jesus Christ Superstar, whatever, doesn't mean you're going to hell, you know. And so Shawn called, he said, I'm in. And from that day on, he was Jimmy. I mean, it made total sense when he let us shave his head. You know, he did curse in the film, which we didn't require, but it sounded good at the moment. And just completely genuine. You know, he had our family go out to Houston and sit ringside at the Royal Rumble, and he was just such a good person and awesome. I'd work with him again in a heartbeat. He hasn't done much since 90 Feet, but his focus is still on training young wrestlers. And so convincing him took us flying out there and just being like, this movie is going to do well, and it's going to move people and stir up emotions. You know, there's things about that film that are just kind of mystical. The first one being Shawn, the other thing being the song at the end of the movie, which is by,
I like that song.
Yeah, it's called Stone by Whiskey Myers, and we heard it on Yellowstone. And the scene in Yellowstone that was so incredibly well done. It was just two people dancing and that song playing, you know, and the piano. And I'm like, that has to be at the end of our film. And Tiff's like, okay, you know, and we called, she calls the Whiskey Myers guys and says, this is what we have to offer money wise. And can you do it? And they were like, sure. And then I had to go to the, you know, the money and say, hey, I need an extra $5,000, what it was. And they were like, yeah, let's do it. And that last scene of the film just always gets me, you know, because the music hits at that moment. And
Actually, I'm getting a little teary at this thing, because I've seen the movie twice and it always gets to me like that. But yeah, you're right.
He's just so frail and old. And Sean was just like, I look old. And I'm like, well, you know, here, and you touched on this earlier, but the thing was, I call it the Tony Soprano effect. Okay. We spent 7 years watching Tony rape and kill and murder and steal. And at the end of the show, when he gets whacked, or some people think, you know, people were upset about it. And I'm like, this guy never did a good thing in his life, and you're pissed that he gets killed, you know, or he doesn't. I mean, it's open-ended, so it's not a spoiler. But with Sean, it was like, I just thought, what's the worst thing that can happen to this guy besides death, you know? And to me, it was, he's lost the son, and he's, you know, like, maybe I can salvage this relationship with the one that I still have, and he can't even do that.
Yeah.
And he just, you know, is an old man on the porch reading his Bible. And I'm like, that's it. That's how it ends.
Yeah.
And like I said, it tore us apart because most people liked it, and then a lot of people hated it.
Yeah.
It was like, at least they're talking about it, you know?
Yeah. So, not to jump off a topic here, but I'm curious to hear something about if you saw the movie. Did you ever get a chance to watch The Many Saints of Newark?
Oh yeah, we saw it in the theater.
Did you like it?
It had moments where I was like, you want to see more. You want to. The problem with that movie is the same thing with, to me, the Mayans show. Like Sons of Anarchy was so good.
Yes.
You want to see the Sons of Anarchy, and it's there, but it's just kind of floating out there. So with Many Saints of Newark, I thought the lead was phenomenal. His accent was perfect, but I felt like you were just waiting for Tony to show up, waiting for the Paulie we know to show up, you know, and it just never got there. I thought the end was great.
You like the ending, really?
I like the ending.
I hated
from
it.
The perspective. Yeah, a lot of people did. I like the ending from the perspective of, at least they left it open that they could go further.
Yeah.
Because because you know how David Chase is. He doesn't give a shit. If you know, he's going to do what he wants to do. So in my head, I was thinking it's just going to end and that's it. I did like how the music hit, and, you know, Christopher and that whole thing, but it could have been better, but I mean,
yeah, I felt it could have been a lot better, be completely honest.
You know, and part of me is like, those guys are so old when you see them now, they could never slip into those roles again.
No.
You know, like Paulie he can't be the Paulie from the show, and it's sad. You're kind of like, this sucks, you know? But I mean, I enjoyed it, but I didn't enjoy it as much as the show.
No, I had a big problem with the movie being, because I was so conflicted from the moment, because I like the way it started with the narration. And then you start getting that flashback. Well, I'm sorry, you go back in time, I would say, and then you get to see I forgot the actor's name who plays Tony's uncle. I forget.
Alessandro?
Yeah. So I like that, but I just didn't. I don't know. I'm not from New Jersey, but I've been there enough because I have family still live out there. And I call me crazy, but if it was, because I live in North Carolina, I try to convince my wife we should go to New York or New Jersey. If we go to New Jersey, we'll live like, you know, an hour outside the city. We'll be in the suburbs. It'll be perfect. And she hates it. And I was like, all right, whatever. So we ended up coming down here, which is fine. I'm happy with it.
Yeah.
So, you know, for me, Jersey is such a special state because I love that state so much. But anyways, the point I'm getting is that for some reason, I had a big problem with the movie being presented in that way, where it seemed very stereotypical about mob films, which I did not like. That was a part that I absolutely hated about the movie. I understand David Chase is one of those guys that do it the way I wrote in the script, and we're not budging anything else. I get that. And if he has the power to do it, I probably would do it too. But I hated the movie so in areas where it just felt like it just became, we want to be a mob movie, and this is how we're going to do it to make it a mob film. I did not like that at all. That's kind of the perception I got from the movie. There are great things about the film. I thought Johnny Bernthal was fantastic in the movie. I thought James' son, Michael Gandolfini, I thought he was great. He obviously looked like him, sounded like him. So it was as far as the castings are, everyone looked good for the part. Just wasn't enough for me to buy into it, unfortunately. But I mean, you watching it, you being from Jersey, did you have a connection with that as well too?
Yeah, I grew up in the northeast part of New Jersey, so Bergen County. I mean, I knew if you watch The Sopranos, the party box stores where Bobby gets killed and they find out, Vito's gay and all that. I've been in that store 200 times. The toy store with, I've been in there. I know where Satin Dolls is because it's right off Route 17, and so it was kind of fun to see all those places. It was similar to when we wrapped watching Breaking Bad. We went out to Albuquerque and visited all those sets. If I went back to New Jersey tomorrow, I could go to all those sets in New Jersey. Speaking of that, I mean, Jersey's a strange place. It's a lot of people think it's like the armpit of the country. And we were back a few years ago, 2019, for a festival, and I was like, man, I couldn't wait to show my wife, like, oh, we're gonna eat, pork roll sandwich, and then you there, and I was like, wait a minute, this place is dirty, I was like, I'm kind of embarrassed that I brought you.
That's what my wife said too. I was like, isn't that what's great about it? So,
yeah, it was
I'm a down and dirty type of guy. I was like, I love that because it has a lot of personality. But yeah, you were saying.
Yeah, it was like, this place is dirty, and then we went for pork roll sandwich, and she takes a bite. She's like, this is disgusting. I'm like, yeah, it's not as good as I remember, but it was like the best three things as a kid growing up out of New Jersey were Billy Joel, Bruce Springsteen, and Bon Jovi. That was like, but for me, to get back to that, the best movie that encompasses New Jersey, what it feels like, what it looks like, the dirtiness, the coldness, is The Wrestler. Because
you're right. Yeah.
That is how gritty the Northeast is. I mean, it's hard to live up there. It really is, because the winter is cold. I remember flying into Newark and like the snow is black, and it's just the pollution, and you're like, get this crap off the ground already. But The Wrestler to me is always the best film about New Jersey without being, about New Jersey. But
do you miss it though? Living in Texas for a number of years?
No, I don't miss it. I have some friends up there, and I've reconnected with a lot of friends through the film business that I didn't talk to in high school. I mean, I left after high school, and I feel like if you don't leave after high school, you're not going to leave, and most of my family all my family's out of New Jersey now, and gone to warmer climates and stuff. It's great to visit, but I've been here for long enough that Texas is home. I raised my kids here. It's a cheap place to live. People from California and even the East Coast come here, and they're like, you can get a 5-bedroom house for $300,000. Like, it's just, they don't believe it. Yeah. And so, you can afford a little bit of land out here, and filming is easier here because there's tons of locations, and people are super friendly compared to the Northeast. And so I don't miss it. I do miss the seasons. We have 2 seasons here, hot and extremely hot, and that's it. But you get used to it. I mean, we did have a freak snowstorm last year, and shut everything down for like a week. We were filming in the middle of it. That was no fun. But people find out I'm from New Jersey. I mean, I don't have an accent anymore.
Yeah, you don't. Yeah. I mean, I noticed once in a blue moon, because I've heard you talk before in the past, even now during our conversation, it kind of creeps out just a little bit. But it has to be, I guess it has to be like in the passion, the moment of passion, I meant to say, where, because like I don't have an accent myself, but because I'm from originally Northern Virginia, and I've had a lot of people coming down from Boston, New York, and Jersey, and then make way down to that metropolitan area. So some of that kind of influence on me, but I don't really speak that way. But when I get mad, I notice it comes out a little bit more.
I lived in Virginia for a little while. I lived in Chicks Beach.
Which beach?
Chicks Beach near Norfolk.
Oh, you lived like by the base out there, right?
Yeah, for a little while.
Yeah, I know where that's at.
There's a melting pot there.
It's
like you said.
Yeah, it's huge. It's because that's one thing about Virginia. I think people don't realize that it's a melting pot of like all the different cultures, especially up in Northern Virginia, because you got Southern Maryland, DC, and Northern Virginia, and you have everybody out there: CIA, FBI, government, all that stuff. And it's just overcrowded. I got tired of that. So my wife and I leave. So she's like, "You want to go to New Jersey?" And I was like, "Well, I mean, I guess I was just like, I had so many great memories going to Jersey that I wanted to live in that world for for the rest of my life. But we're happy here. We love North Carolina. We live right just outside of Charlotte. And my wife loves it here. She doesn't want to leave the state no matter what. So
good. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you about Texas for you now, because you've made yourself at home out there. What's actually some of the more surprising things about Texas that you probably didn't expect to come across that actually had made it a place that made you feel more like home, or anything that may have stuck out for you that made you appreciate where you are now, especially now that you work out there on a full-time basis?
There's definitely a disconnect for me. I mean, Texas has got an amazing history, that New Jersey, New York did, but New Jersey really doesn't have. And for instance, like the Rodeo Thief is completely written off of my wife's
Right. Remember you telling me that?
I mean, she grew up in Texas and she, married someone in a past life that was rodeo and her kids rodeo. And I'm like, I don't know the first thing about it. A lot of the discussions that the mother in the Rodeo Thief has with her son are discussions ripped out of Tiffany's discussions with her son or her ex-husband, or it was literally me hearing these stories going, that's a conversation we need to put in a movie. It was like, who paid those gate fees and who taught you how to throw a football? I did, because she did with her son. And I didn't have that experience, so it was like, wow, the mothers out here are sometimes left to raise the boys because the dads are either constantly working or they're caught up in this rodeo lifestyle where I wouldn't be able to do it. It's a hard life, it's doing a ton of dangerous work for not a lot of money, but it's like you said earlier, if you love it, you're going to find a way to do it. So I guess I just wasn't prepared for how cowboy this area is. I mean, you go down to the stockyards here and everybody's wearing boots and a hat except me, and I'm just like, I don't own those. I'm sorry. It's nothing personal.
Would you ever consider wearing them?
Yeah, I have in the past.
Okay. Did you like it?
The hat is fine. The boots take some getting used to because you can't wear like skinny jeans or anything. You got to wear like boot cut jeans.
Yeah.
And so those kind of freak me out. I mean, I could stick my head through the bottom of these jeans, and I'm like, this is weird because if you're wearing like, Nikes or whatever, you can't see your shoe, and so it's just a different culture. I think, more power to them because, we've been able to take the Texas landscape and make some great stories out of it, where I never would have had these ideas if I stayed in Florida or New Jersey. It'd all be gangster films or movies about people getting eaten in swamps, but I mean, we got into the Western genre because of this area, and you can find Western towns here that are functioning towns that people really think they're still in the 1880s, and you're just like, man, I've never seen anything like this.
So speaking of 1880s, then let's go into Buckskin real quick, because that's a period piece, and I know you mentioned that's a personal film for you, which you touched upon earlier. But was that movie did you intend on that movie to be a period piece, or did it just happen to turn that way along with the writing process when you had decided how you want to go about with the story?
I had seen The Revenant, which is where we met Arthur Red Cloud, who was in Copperbill. I'd seen The Revenant and I thought it blew my mind, not so much the film, but how they made it, and
did you like the movie?
I don't think I'd ever watch it again.
It's a beautiful it's a beautiful looking film.
Gorgeous to look at. It's just not the kind of thing you can watch several times. I love the fight at the end was
same
for
here.
me, how they did that and I love Tom Hardy, so it was kind of, but
same here.
The problem for me was with Buckskin, originally it was like a Western. So you had like horses and it was in a town. And then I literally thought to myself, well, nobody here in North Texas has tried to do their version of The Revenant. It's always a Western, and it's usually a spaghetti Western or a comedy Western. So let's just try to make it as brutal as possible. So we shifted it from like 1880 to like 1820, and shot some of it down at the Heritage Museum. So that was like a real 1880 or 1820s cabin, and you know, we changed the attire and, you know, made it where, you know, it was very dark and disturbing. You know, we burned the guy's Andy's face because that was something that would happen back then. It was, you know, these natives would roll through and steal your stuff and burn you or scalp you, you know. And so, and it was all to me because I wanted to take Tom Zembrod and just put him in the worst possible situation and see how he could do. And I remember at one point we were kind of like, maybe we need to ease off, you know, because like he's exhausted, you know, and he was like, no, I'm good, you know. And I mean, it was God, we shot that in like 8 or 9 days. It was brutal. I mean,
So you shot that in over a week for that film?
I think it was 8 days. Yeah.
So when you shot, so you mentioned about Tom kind of getting like the worst end of the deal on that production. Did that have an effect on your guys' relationship during the production, where, you know, maybe he didn't like how you were pushing him too hard, or did he appreciate it? So just keep going, whatever works best.
Tom has this incredible knack. Billy has it too, where I usually go up to him and say, you need to say something here. It's not in the script. We need to come up with something. And Billy will look at you and go, I got it, man. Yeah, I got it, you know, and he'll nail it. And then Tom, he's more of like, what do you want me to say? And you come up with it. But I told Tom, I said, you need to memorize the script. Do not change one word in Buckskin. It is written, and he was not allowed to ad lib. And that was probably the hardest part for him, you know. But I mean, we had a very small showing of it. It was just me and my wife, Robert Keith, who played the captain, Tom and Robert's wife, here at the house. We put it on the big screen and watched it. I think everybody was crying at the end of it, you know, because it was like, man, that shoot was hell. And with just how it all came together with switching the end and everything, I think everybody was just kind of like, I equate it to watching when I went to see The Passion of the Christ in the theater.
Yeah.
And it ended, nobody moved or talked or anything. You just sat there like, what did I just watch? You know?
Yeah.
And so we had that moment here at the house because everyone was like, I don't want to be the first one to say what I feel. So it was just, but Tom was phenomenal.
It's funny because I remember the first time I watched it, I actually had the same reaction too, where I was just like, and when I'm saying this, I'm not saying this in a negative light. I'm like, what did I just watch? You know, and I remember thinking, and that's why we'll watch it again just to comprehend. But anyway, so. Well, so with Tom though, you know, you guys have obviously worked well together here, but when you guys had finished the production, did you go back and have to like talk to him again and say, hey, listen, you know, just to let you know, I know it was hard on you, but you know, I appreciate what you've done and putting up with me, or I mean, or was it kind of like back and forth, like, you know, hey, just give me a break until I collect myself?
I had to keep reminding him. Tiffany did a really good job of pulling him aside. Cindy, our associate producer, she did like, just, it's nothing personal. Just you're ad-libbing, go back to the script, you know, and we would just be like, love you, bud, you know, and we'd hug at the end of every night and we'd drive home. So there was never any tension or anything. I think where it may have been one step too far was we had a pickup day and we had to go back and we needed Robert and Tom, and it was like sliding back into that character was very difficult for everyone except Robert. He was able to pull that off no problem, you know. But I think Tom was kind of like, okay, how do I get back here? And then the pickup day was like one of the most emotional scenes of the movie. So you had to go from like, we wrapped a week ago, but wait, we need to add some stuff. So I'm asking you to go back to being exhausted and sick and cold and tired and now cry on top of that. You know, it was like, and I think he was like, I think his exact words were, he just was like, oh, Brett, oh, you know, it's like, I'm like, I need the scene, dude. I need it. And it's the scene in the movie where he's covered in blood. And, you know, says about his children. And that was our pickup day. And it was tough. It was awkward, you know, that day. But I mean, Tom's here every Thanksgiving, and you know, it's just he's part of the family, you know. So.
Interesting. Well, so I want to just point out something with you real quick. You know, when I've actually listened to you talk before in the past, and I've come across a few interviews online too that I've picked up on here. One of the biggest things I've noticed about you is that it's quite obvious you're very passionate about the story you want to tell, and you mentioned before about you want to have a message behind it, and I certainly have picked up on that as well too. But what I also have come to appreciate with what you're doing here, because I'm not. It's not that I'm scared to ask these questions, but maybe one day if we're able to pull this off in private, because what I'm always curious about what you're being dealt with as far as production, budget, things of that nature. And the reason I'm curious about this, and I'm not asking you to answer this question now, but the reason I'm curious about it is because I guess I want to have a deep understanding of like what it is you actually have to go through as far as the, you know, apart from directing, setting up the shots and all that stuff, but the other aspects of like, okay, so this is our budget. And if you want to use these, if you want to shoot at this location, you're going to take X amount of money out to put it up here. So now if you want to get this actor, that means we can only offer them this amount. Like having to comprehend and having to figure out, okay, so how are we going to pull this off here? Because, you know, for me, I can imagine that it could be very stressful. And you being the guy that everyone has to go to, hey, Brett, can I ask you this here? No, go to my wife. She'll answer those questions for you, whatever. So I always find it very not difficult, but I always find it very. I'm impressed when people deal with that, and yet here we are talking. You seem very even keel. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so
it's stress. You nailed it, man. It is, and I don't envy anyone that has to do it on their own. You know, because I mean, just building a schedule is stressful,
right?
You know, because if you think about having 8 actors and you have 10 days to shoot, and these guys are in it for 8 days, so you know they're going to be there every day, but then this guy has to be here with this guy and this guy, but this guy also has to be here. It's extremely difficult, and you just have to just take a deep breath and compartmentalize it and say, okay, today I'm going to tackle the legal documents, tomorrow I'm going to do the schedule, and ask people for help. You know, we were talking about a project today with the producer, and I said, I'm going to need you to do the call sheets and all that because I have to focus on this, and Tiffany has to do casting, and she handles the contracts because it's just too much, you know? And so I just can't imagine someone trying to do a feature film all on their own.
Yeah.
I mean, for instance, our costume designer, Stacey Lee, we work with her all the time. I send her the script, she reads it. If she wants to do it, she signs on for the project. I give her a couple notes. This guy needs to be wearing all red, whatever it is. And then I trust her 100% to put the costumes together. And I don't bother her ever again, you know? And same thing with like my DPs. They're like, you want to build a shot list? And I'm like, you build a shot list. I'll look at it, adjust it, and we'll shoot, you know? I just don't want to be in control of every aspect because I feel that's when you grab hold of it so tight, you start to piss everybody off, you know? And it's tough though. I will say it's hard. It's hard to delegate sometimes because you're like, move that light. And they're doing, and you're like, hey, move that light. And they don't, and you want to go over there and just move the damn light yourself, you know? But I've trained myself, and Tiffany's helped me just be like, hey, Tom, when you get a second, I need that light moved, you know? And then I can go do something else. But it is extremely difficult. But I will say, when you've done as many movies as we have, you have a process to it and a method to the madness. And eventually, like the post-production stuff is the worst. The deliverables, the legal deliverables, that stuff is the worst. But
what do you mean by legal deliverables?
So, you know, like when you're selling your film, you
Mhm.
need a chain of title of the script. Who owns the script?
Oh,
You know, how much was your editor paid? You need proof of that the score is original and you didn't use anybody else's music. And all of that is just a beatdown. But we've done so many, we know who to go to for help if we can't figure something out, or we've got like a template and we just fire it off, you know. And but it's not always that way, you know. And but like I said, if it's too complicated, we cut it out and we say that's too difficult at this budget, so we're not going to deal with that. We'll find another way. And I'm sure you've heard this before, but at these budgets, you can't just throw money at a problem. You have to outthink it.
Yeah.
And so there are times where Tiffany and I sit there and just stare at each other, and then it's like she'll go, aha, we can hire this guy, you know, and you're like, oh, perfect. It doesn't cost anymore. You know, it always comes back to the money. But yeah, it's difficult. I'm glad we're a team and able to kind of tag each other in and out, you know.
So when you're writing a story, are you thinking about just the story first and then fleshing out what you want to, as far as, you know, your vision is concerned, and then you think about the budget after the fact, or do you already have it in mind? Okay, so I know that with the next project, we're going to work on a sci-fi film, and we're going to have X amount of money. So I'm going to try to write a story within the confines of the budget.
Yeah, that's how I do it.
Okay.
I figure out, you know, our distributor will call and say, hey, we need a sci-fi movie. Well, how much is the budget? It's X amount of dollars. So then I start writing, or I look for someone to write it, or I look for a script that's almost done, or a short film script that we can develop at that budget. And we haven't had any problems. I mean, recently I had a guy with a horror movie idea, which we've never really done horror. And it's not really a genre I want to get into, but because they're so saturated.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have any good horror movie ideas, but, and I'm afraid of everything. So it's like, you know, it's like, but we lived in a haunted house for a while. So I think that's why I'm afraid to touch some of that stuff. But
okay.
Yeah, that's the biggest hurdle for some people is, hey, we want to make a movie. Great. Can you write me a Western with 10 actors in one location? And they're just like, no, I can't do that. And I'm like, that's all this budget will allow. So if you can do it, go for it. And then, you know, like The Bounty Men, which is the Western we're filming in January, it's a slim budget. There's only 6 actors, 1 location, you know, but we crafted an interesting story around that, you know. It's kind of fun. It's like, you can't leave the room because you only have 1 room to shoot in sometimes, you know. So,
do you storyboard your ideas as far as how you want
sometimes?
Okay.
Yeah. This one we did because our approach to The Bounty Men is interesting. It's our version of a Western shot like Children of Men. So almost every scene is one take, one continuous shot. Not the whole movie, but every scene will cut together, but in between those cuts, it's just one continuous shot for every scene in the movie. So Scott Ross, our DP, and I met like last week and started storyboarding some of that, but it's just ballet, you know, it's just repetition. I'm sure he'll come over, we'll get my kids, you know, little action figures out, and we'll, you know, here's where the camera goes here and there, and we'll piece it together. And then, you know, Scott and I have known each other for a decade, so it's like we can look at each other and know what the other person's thinking. So if something's not working, you know, it's, and my wife is a lot like that too. She'll be in the monitor and she'll look at me and I'll know she hated that shot. We better adjust it. You know, it's just.
Well, so, you know, with the upcoming project you got coming down the pipeline here, you know, I know we've kind of touched upon it before about what it is you're working on and some things I'm sure down the line that you haven't touched upon yet that you're looking to get done here. Do you give yourself breaks in between the pictures you're working on to allow yourself to recharge and then go back? Or are you one of those people that just, you know, once we're done with this, you're already getting on that and getting everything put together, moving on to the next set the following week?
We gave ourselves the month of October, November, and December this year to not shoot anything. You know, holiday time, you know, we've got, you know, an expanding family and stuff like that. So it's like, let's take a couple months to set up 2022. And then once 2022 hits, I will say it's, you know, it's balls to the wall next year. It's as many good quality projects as we can do next year. We're going to line them up. We're going to bring them to distributors and say, would you like us to do this? If yes, then we can do it. We're partnering with some other filmmakers kind of to farm some of that out. And I think it was really Tiffany's idea. The vision for the company has always been to be bigger than just us writing, us directing, us, you know, is giving others a shot to come in and make their projects. It's just really hard because I think I've said this already, but it's just hard to get people on board with what we can do. You know, it's
right.
like
to keep it at your pace.
Yeah. Can you be ready in 60 days to shoot? Oh my gosh, no, I've got to do this. Well, can you shoot this in 10 days or less for a lot of these projects, you know? Oh no, I can't. Well, then it's just not a good fit, you know.
What's the longest picture that it took to shoot?
90 feet was 3 weeks.
Okay.
weeks long. Copperville was the second longest, and then well, Apocalypse Road was months, but you know,
Right.
everything else has been 2 weeks or less.
Interesting. And so is that the so for you when you're shooting within that time with that time frame, do you prefer that now that you've done it for such a long time, or are you still deep down saying, I want more time with these projects?
Yeah, if I had a studio, which we have some bigger projects coming up with some people, really cool stuff that are, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollar budgets rather than under 100, you know. And I don't mind the pace because, like I said, I know what we're paying people, and it's not peanuts, but it's not what they'd be making on a union project. So I would never ask them to work 2 weeks, you know, for $2,000. You know, not that that's what we do, but I mean that's almost insulting, you know, to these people that are putting in so much work. So I want to keep the shoot short and just let it fall on my shoulders that we have to get it done in that time frame. And I will say we've never, except for this shark movie, we've never gone over time. We've always wrapped in whatever amount of days. Now with the shark film, we had to do a full pickup day because we underestimated how quick the CGI was. I was like, oh, there's a shark. There it goes. Oh, that was like 5 seconds, you know, instead of the 20 we planned on. So I don't mind it, but definitely on some of these bigger projects, we'll have weeks, you know, extra to shoot. And that'll be nice because it's not as, you know, high octane. You're not as tired
Right.
at the end of the day.
Right.
You know, these quick shoots will wear you out, but
and you say you work 10 days, sorry, not 10 days, 10-hour shifts for the most part in working all these projects. Does that also include the night shoots that you do too, or where you guys are having all night?
We've never shot well, that's not true. We've shot some overnights where you start at like 10 and you wrap at like 6 in the morning. It sucks, you know.
Yeah.
I don't like doing it. So if we have a night shoot and we're shooting like this time of year, it's dark by 5:45. So we'll say let's start at 6 and shoot till 1 or 2 and go home and come back the next day after, you know, 8 hours of sleep. But it's been a long time. Buckskin was the last movie when we shot at night with the torch scene.
Yeah.
All those, I mean, we were just worn out. And poor Tom was just cold and wet and like hungry. You know, it's just, so we try to keep it, you know, even on night shoots, like an 8-hour night shoot would be enough.
Got it. But everything is pretty much planned out from what you said before to make sure everything gets done within that time.
Yeah. I mean, we're granular with it. We're like, okay, scenes 1 and 2, we've got 3 shots. We've got an hour to do each one, so that's 2 hours. Then we're gonna take a break, and then, you know, lunch is.
Oh wow! So you guys actually, because I'm getting a better understanding with how you guys go at. So you guys really do take the time. I mean, you get everything done as needed, but you actually do take the time to give yourself a bit of a break.
Yeah.
To recharge. So are you guys? But so are you actually taking a break as far as like, okay, guys, 2-hour break, we'll come back and we'll reset this time, or are you just kind of like, let me just try to tweak some things here along the way in between that break?
It depends. Like Tiffany's very good at, like, she knows if she doesn't force me to eat, I won't eat, you know, or if I don't take ibuprofen, my legs will hurt, you know, like, so she's constantly like, it's lunch, Brett, go eat, and then everyone go after him so I can make sure he eats, you know. And then she will force me to sit down and decompress and, you know, camaraderise with the
so she's almost like a babysitter too.
She's, you know, we move so fast.
Yeah.
She's always like, go tell him good job, you know, go tell her that was a great take. And it's because I always tell the actors, if I don't say, because there are actors that'll go up to her and be like, he thinks I suck because he didn't say anything. He just said, all right, moving on. And the rule is, I tell all the actors on one of these Zoom calls, if I don't say anything, it means it was great. If I have to say like, hey, let's do that again, that's like your cue for that wasn't very good. But I'm never going to go, that was terrible or fantastic, you know. So she has to kind of subtly remind me like, hey, that was a really good take. You should pull her aside and tell her how good it was, you know. And I think that's why so many people love working under, because, you know, it is her company, so it's under her umbrella, is because she just really knows how to take care of everybody, and everybody feels important and fed and warm when we're shooting in the cold.
Right.
make sure we have clean bathrooms, because you wouldn't believe how many independent films it's like, here's a bucket, and we're just like, and she's like, no, we're gonna have clean bathrooms, and so that is a lot of our success rests on her being able to manage that.
Interesting. I respect that. I really do, and I think that I'm hoping that whoever will watch this and listen to this here, that they, because here's the thing, I've because I'm kind of jumping a little bit because there's a lot going through my mind about what you just said there that I really do respect and appreciate with what you guys are doing. Because here's the thing that I've noticed a lot about independent movies, and I understand that not everyone's going to be like this, but it's nice to hear that you guys are really putting in the time. Okay, 10-hour day, so you all can go home, and then 2-hour breaks or whatever the case may be, and then once we're done, we'll call you back, and then we'll continue on with the next set of stuff here. But we'll also provide you nice food and so on and so forth. Like those little touches to me are extremely important, because I know it can be very stressful in the set, if you as you explained before. But just hearing those little subtle details, in my opinion, actually makes a big difference in how, not necessarily how I look at the movie, but really how you guys run it and see how it all comes out in the end as far as the final product is concerned. Because then I can think to myself that, well, obviously they had time, they didn't have a lot of time to do these things, but they focused on other areas to alleviate the stress for the actors and the people to focus on their job without having to concern themselves about things that they don't have to concern themselves with. So that's kind of what I want to picking up here from you guys. So I really do respect that.
Yeah, she will go as far as to, on some movie sets that she's worked on, and film sets, TV and all that, the above the line eats first, and they get their meal and they sit at this table, and then it goes crew and cast, and the PAs are left. I mean, a PA on our set may not be getting paid as much as the director of photography, obviously, but they're just as important. So there's no bullshit rules about who eats first or who gets a break. Everybody helps. I mean, I can't tell you how many times we've been on a set and like we drag 15 lights and boxes and all that into the woods. And, Tiffany or Sanine or whoever it is like, if anybody has an extra hand, please just grab a light and bring it back. Nobody's like, oh, that's not my job, that's against union rules.
Right.
It's just, and so you're rewarded for that, and we want everybody to feel just as important as, the main actors, because I mean, a PA that runs slate is important, because I'm not going to do it, and it's like, it's just every job that she hires for is important. And there are tough discussions where it's like, I can't pay you what you want. But, another trap people fall into is like, I want you to shoot the movie. I don't have 300 a day, but I'm going to give you 2 points on the back end. Points are worthless. Okay. So
yeah, I know what you're talking about.
She never lies about what she has, and she'll say, we have X, but we're going to feed you really good. I can promise you, you're going to go home every night. Everything is super organized, and just think about it and let me know. And more times than not, they're like, yeah, let's do it, and so we're lucky like that. But we do have people that won't work with us because of the budgets, and that's fine. It is, everybody's entitled to their own decision for their career and whatnot. But
do you ever get people come back to you, say for example, like you reached out to somebody, actor, production side, and you say, hey, we're going to do this project, we want to offer you this position, but we're going to pay you X amount, and they say no, then they come, but they go off and do the thing, let's say it doesn't work out, they come back and say, hey, you know what, I'll take the job now. Does that ever happen?
It's happened a couple times, and I mean, we've handled it professionally. We're not going to cut off our nose to spite our face and say, oh, well, now you only make X. It's like, hey, the offer we gave you last time is still on the table, unless it's been cast already. We've been a victim of an actor saying, yeah, I'm in. There was an actor for 90 Feet that was going to play Sean's role, who was a big name, and or big-ish name, used to be a big name. He was in Terminator, and it wasn't Schwarzenegger. And so, and he was in
talking about.
That's who I was. So, and he was in, and then he was out, and then he was in, and then he was in if his wife was in, and it just becomes, like I said, too much.
I think drama. I know exactly who you're talking about.
So you just cut it out and say, I'm sorry, we'd love to work with you, but this project's just not. It was funny because for 90 Feet from Home, we had this crazy idea to try to get Christian Bale, and I think to play the dad. And we were at the point where we're like, screw it. Let's just offer him the role and tell him, you tell us how much money you need, you know, and maybe the investors will be like, to get Christian Bale, which you know is a return on your investment, we'll do it. And I think his agent was like, he'll talk to you about it. He wants 250K. And I was thinking, that's not that bad, you know? Okay, but it was 250K just to talk about the role.
Oh,
And
really?
we're like, yeah, just to take a meeting. And
Well, so
we
you
were
got to
like,
pay him to have a meeting with him?
yeah, and I think
That's
that
weird.
came from, but digging into it more, she had said, you know, he'd been a victim of working for independent films that either didn't pay or, you know, he signs on to
Oh, I
them and then all
see.
of a sudden nothing happens. I don't remember his name, Coates maybe from Sons of Anarchy,
Kim
curly haired
Coates.
guy. Yeah, we had reached out to him for a role, maybe Copper Bill, before we hired Dustin. And he flat out said, I don't do independent film anymore because I've been burned, you know, on points and payment. And I respect it. You know, I get it. Because
At least
they're
he was
like,
upfront.
yeah, he was just like, I'm not even going to string you along. You know, when we shot that Western that never came out, I had a phone call with Sam Shepard before he passed, you know, and
Yeah.
Sam was in to play Judd Nelson's role. He was like, I want to do it, but you got to give me X, you know, and Y and Z. And the producers are like, we can't, we can't get there. And so I don't think it's that these actors don't want to do it. They just know the value they bring, and all power to them, you know, but for
Yeah.
us, it's this, we're very upfront. This is what we have. Yes or no, you know, that type of deal. So,
Interesting.
yeah.
Well, that's a big education here from you about how these things actually work out and finer
Yeah.
details. I want to just close off and give you a lot of props for what you have done because um, I'm always looking out for new material and new people who are doing stuff at directing, writing, whatever the case may be. I usually lean more towards the independent side of it because I always figured that there are hidden gems out there that no one's going to know about
Yeah.
that need to be seen and heard and so on. And I always hope that in conversations like this that this will hopefully encourage people to listen to you talk and hear where you're coming from, and then in turn encourage them to want to go and check out the film as a result of this conversation. So that's what I'm hoping will come from this here. So I I want to genuinely say that I'm a very big fan of what you've done, and I really do mean when I say that.
Yeah.
I appreciate the approach you've taken with your stories, as I said before, because there's something about I feel like there's a darkness in the stories that you have that you're taking on here, and I always feel like this. It's just a matter of time before the right project, the right circumstance, the right budget, whatever the case may be, that will allow you to fulfill that vision and really showcasing some darkness with the stories and the characters. Because I think that's really going to be the point where I think will be the tipping point for people to be like, holy shit, you should check out this movie because this is
Yeah.
going to be the film that will really, hoping would set the change of will change the course for you because I see a lot of that in your movies. I really, really do, and I almost feel like every single time I watch another film that I haven't that I'm coming across now that I'm going to see that get pushed further and further and further. And I think the closest to that, most likely, what I think was 90 Feet because of Sean's character, and then of course, Rodeo Thief had a little bit of that as well too. So I think you have a lot of great potential, and I certainly do see what you've done on the movie on your films. I meant to say, working with the actors you've worked with, and the fact that they're coming back to you guys and working together, and you guys obviously developed a relationship. That says a lot, and that's the first thing I always notice when I see the filmography. Who have they worked with? Not because are they good, and it's more about
Yeah.
if there's a consistency in a relationship with every film. It's for a good reason. It's the way I see it.
Yeah.
So I got to give you a lot of props for that, and I hope that that whatever upcoming projects you guys coming in with that pipeline, but to say, people will look out for it and check out your work because I'm actually looking forward to hearing seeing what was it Overlord movie that you had done with
Yeah.
with
Operation
Billy?
Overlord.
What
Yeah.
was that?
Operation Overlord.
Operation Overload, because that's I first heard about the movie when Billy had
Yeah.
posted on his social media account. So I was curious to see how that's going to turn out.
It's wild, man. It's a wild ride.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how that's going to look here in its final product, and then of course the shark one you're talking about. I'm really curious about that one because I don't know when you say shark film. I'm not going to lie, the first thing that comes to mind is like sci-fi. You see?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm wondering if that's going to be along those lines, or if you considering your sensibilities, how you're going to actually drive that story there. So I'm really curious to see how that's going to turn out for you. But is there anything you want to say in closing here about what it is you want people to be on the lookout for?
You know, we have so much going on, but you know, next up for us, Meteor, which is about a meteor, comes out on the 23rd of this month. It hits DVD at Walmart nationwide. It's on Amazon Prime right now.
Oh, that was actually one of your movies that came around?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay.
What's interesting about that is Robert Keith, who's been on this crazy journey with us, we put him in the spotlight for this role. And Tom Hallam actually plays a crazed bad guy in this movie. And I'm just interested. I haven't heard a lot from people, but I think it kind of, when you hear Meteor, you think of Greenland, explosions and all that. And so we wanted to do a movie that had that in it, but it's a tight, introverted story.
I'm going to check it out then.
And I'd be curious to see, I mean, not a lot of people have watched it yet. So I haven't read a lot of the feedback, but that's what's next for us. And, you know, I think next year will be good. And I think just to kind of close what you were talking about, I think we have the story that will change the trajectory, and we just need to find the right investor for it. But it's a story that, just thinking about it, it's original. There's nothing like it. There's never been a movie like it, period. It's a ghost story.
But not a horror movie though, right?
No, it's like a ghost story. And it gives me the chills just thinking about it. The end is, it's a Sixth Sense type ending that I think will leave people just shocked. It's incredible. So we're hoping we can do that. It's not on the calendar yet, but I've told the movie to a very select few people, and they're just like, whoa, you know, I want to watch that. So hopefully that's the one that you were talking about.
That'll change the course here. Interesting. All right. Well, listen, I'm gonna go and sign this off here. But,
okay.
So for the camera, I'm gonna say thank you very much for taking the time here to speak with me on that. But otherwise, I'll be on the lookout for your work, and I'll be doing my absolute best to help promote that as well too.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right, no worries, man.